Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick revisit to the Sony A6300. Now, this camera launched back in 2016, and at the time it was as cutting edge as mirrorless got. Yes, no in-body image stabilization, but 4K video and some very good autofocus prowess, 11 frames per second, 425 points of phase detection. Of course, the high frame rate, aka slow motion capture capability, a lot of things that a lot of people were looking for. In terms of ports, nothing crazy, but good to have a microphone jack, and of course to have video out, as well as a micro USB port, the good old multi-port for different Sony accessories. So what's to dislike here in 2020? Well, the A6400 has absolutely supplanted this camera. It brings slightly better, to say the least, autofocus performance, real-time tracking, something that is a blessing on the video side of things. It's not as prone to overheating. It has a deeper buffer in terms of the number of images that you can successively capture, but that doesn't make the A6300 antiquated in any way. I've done plenty of videos over the past year discussing what current offerings Sony has and how the 6300 still compares, and it often still compared relatively favorably, and it still does, and that's because the only camera, in my opinion, that really blows this away in Sony's APS-C mirrorless lineup is the 6600, and that's because not only does it bring in-body stabilization like the 6500, a deeper buffer, the autofocus prowess that was revealed and enjoyed in the 6400, but most importantly to me, the new battery, which isn't a new battery for Sony, but is a new battery in the APS-C class. So yes, right now the A6600 is the camera in Sony's mirrorless lineup to beat, but that doesn't mean that saving some money and going with an older model like the 6300 that I have here is not worth a long, hard consideration. And I say that because this will be, at least for the foreseeable future, the last video that I'll be sharing with all of you about the 6300, because I did just sell it. Now, me selling it is not an indication of it not being a useful photographic or video tool. Those of you that follow my channel know that I've got a lot of different tools. My favorite right now is the A7R4, and it pretty much can do everything. It's a little bit bulky compared to anything in the APS-C class lineup of mirrorless from Sony, but that's because it's full frame. But the fact that it can double and give me, I would say, very good APS-C results with the crop factor taken into account, and then give me best-in-class detail in its full frame mode, it makes it the best tool for what I want to do, what I shoot both in still and video. However, in the APS-C realm right now, if budget and your performance to budget ratio is relevant, this camera is just going to become increasingly more desirable. Now, from a new perspective, it's still expensive. It's expensive enough brand new that you probably should be looking at the A6400, or if you need in-body stabilization, look at the A6500, but I'm not saying you should make the jump to the 66. I already explained the 66 is the top of the food chain right now, and it should be. It carries the highest price, the highest feature set, but this is still a fantastic camera that I think lives a formidable life here in 2020 and will satisfy the majority of users. Does it overheat? Yes, it can overheat. Does it have great autofocus capabilities I mentioned at the top of the video? Absolutely. Competent EVF, competent display on the back of the camera. We have a hot shoe. We have a flash, something that is vacant from the latest and greatest, oddly enough, and many people wish it were back. Does it have the ability to monitor audio? No, it doesn't. But remember what type of camera this is. Remember the price point it's coming in at, where it originally began back in 2016. And I think you quickly realize that under the right circumstances, and if you know what you want to shoot, the 6300 is still a brilliant purchase. And that's why the person that purchased it from me did so, because for their needs, they'd rather save the money, go with the 6300, than opting for the newer 6400 that launched last year. And in that savings, that goes directly towards whatever you need. Do you need more batteries? Do you need SD cards? Do you want to invest that in glass? So this video is really just a revisit for the very purpose of the fact that I've really enjoyed this camera. It is and was best in class when it launched, and it still is, again, incredibly competent. And then in addition to that, it isn't dated. I mean, when you look at what it can do everything that the current generation of cameras do. There isn't a feature on those new cameras, except for the real-time tracking, but many could and will live without that, that this cannot accomplish. And that's why I think it's still relevant. That's why I think it's a bargain if you're getting it at the right price, which means anywhere from $600 to $700, I think is a steal for this camera. A steal. Now, if you can spend more than that, yeah, the A6400, 6500, 6600 should be on your hit list. But if your budget is, again, around, $700, this is, in my opinion, the best APS-C class camera in Sony's lineup that you can still buy. And I don't know if I think they've discontinued manufacturing this, but that kind of is the way things go. If they haven't, it still makes sense because, you've got the A6000, you have the 6100, you don't have a 6200, but you have the 6300 right here, 6400, 6500, and 6600, and hopefully, eventually, a 7000, which I will consider the direct descendant of the original NEX7. But, again, the 6300 in terms of battery life, just as competent as every camera, really, that they've made other than the 6600, again, a major premium. The autofocus system, yeah, slightly better in the 6400 and slightly better in the 6600, but when you look at every other camera out there right now from Sony, this is competent, again, in every way. So yeah, it doesn't have real-time tracking. It does, interestingly enough, still have the Play Memory Store, which, if you care about that, which I always enjoyed it, it's nice that it's still here. Wi-Fi controllable, NFC, meaning all of the modern nuance is there. It doesn't have a Type-C port, but you're not going to find that on all of Sony's cameras. Again, fairly limited, but look at the form factor, and that's what I really like about the 6300. I like the price point, I like the form factor, and even though it's aged, it has aged well. So, if you're wondering whether or not the 6300 is still worth looking at, the answer is absolutely. At the right price, this is going to give you almost everything that the 2019 and, of course, soon-to-be 2020 models will bring, but you're coming in at a lot less out of pocket, and especially if you're just getting started, I think this is a brilliant camera to do it with. You don't have to buy full-frame glass, but if you do want to buy full-frame Sony glass or third-party, it's going to work on here. So that's it. Just wanted to revisit this camera. It's worth it. It's leaving the studio today, and I'm going to miss it. I do still have my 6500, so all is not lost, which is a slightly better camera, but really only because it has that in-body stabilization. Remember, without in-body stabilization here, you're going to want lenses that have optical steady shot, unless you're always shooting on a tripod. So just bear that in mind. But overall, a great photographic and video tool that, as it's gotten older, has just become more affordable, as most things do, unless they become collectible. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe. And please stay safe. Later.